Diamond B Sports presents the American Sports Cavalcade with your host, the Tennessee Cowboy, Ed Bruce, and Brock Yates and Steve Evans. The American Sports Cavalcade.
Driving a race car is my way of making a living. My way of putting the bread on a table at home. I'm getting back about half as much as I'm given. And I'm glad that I didn't have to do that for a living, because the competition out there is something you wouldn't believe. I did it to see how well an amateur could do against what is probably the world's greatest drivers, and that's the ones that drive the race cars. Finishing out of the top 10 is nothing but bad.
This is a very special race car. It's one of the cars raced by a very special man, Marty Robbins. Right now in this garage in Nashville, it's being reconditioned to the shape that Marty raced it in. Marty's career as a singer-songwriter is legendary, of course. But singing is just one of the things that Marty liked to do. You see, deep down, Marty was one of the good old boys. And whenever he could, he pursued his other passion in life, stock car racing. Today, we're returning to the track that Marty did most of his racing at for a special tribute to him by his racing peers. I'm Ed Bruce, and what better place for this tribute than the Nashville International Raceway, where the top Grand National NASCAR teams will be competing in the Marty Robbins 420. As always, call the action for you today, my two buddies, Brock Yates and Steve Evans. So let's go on up the road a couple of miles and get some insight into the special race.
Thank you, Ed, and welcome to the Nashville International Raceway, where we're going to run 420 laps of exciting Grand National stock car racing in the name of one of the greatest country and western singers and one of the greatest stock car racers of all time. Appropriately enough, on the pole for this race is Nashville, Tennessee's neighbor from Franklin, Tennessee, Darrell Waltrip, one of the finest drivers ever to run on this racetrack. And Darrell, does this race mean anything more to you because it's in the name of Marty Robbins?
Well, it seems to be a whole lot more emotion around the race because Marty was a really good friend of mine, and when I first came to Nashville in 1967, 1968, he raced here every Saturday night, and he used to tell me things that helped him at this track. I thought it was always neat that Marty would be halfway through a 30-lap feature. He may even be leading the race. He would come out of the race, park his car, get in a limo, and go to the Grand Ole Opry because he had to perform over there at 10 o'clock or something. He was that kind of guy. He loved racing, and he loved being around the sport, and all he ever wanted to do was just be involved. He just thought everything about racing was really neat, and that's what I liked about him.
Thank you, Darrell, and best of luck tonight.
Thanks a lot.
And now to my partner, Steve Evans, who's the outside pole sitter in this race.
Right you are, Brock, and the man on the outside of the front row is Neil Bonnet in the National Engineering Chevrolet car number 75. And Neil, nobody enjoyed the start of a Winston Cup race here in Nashville more than Marty Robbins himself.
Well, Marty was quite a competitor, a lot of fun to be around, and I'm not so sure he ain't got the best seat in the house tonight.
Let's hope so. And, you know, Darrell intends to lead this first lap. What do you think?
Well, it's going to be awful tough on the inside there at this track. I'm not playing after getting at him pretty hard. We'll see how it goes.
All right, good luck to you.
Thank you.
And here's another young man that's going to try to lead that first lap, Ricky Rudd, who qualified third, one of the quickest qualifiers in the league. And on the outside of the second row, Tim Richmond.
In car number 33, the first Buick, will be Harry the Bandit Gant. And alongside him in row number 3 will be car number 44, Terry Labonte. That's a Chevrolet.
A bunch of young hotshots up front, like this one, Dale Earnhardt, who qualified 7th. Outside him, Joe Ruttman, a very experienced driver from the West Coast.
And in the 5th row is Jeff Bodine, who just moved down south from up on the East Coast. Car number 88, the Pontiac. Alongside him, maybe the best of the Fords, car number 9, Bill Elliott.
And here's one of the great ones, Bobby Allison. Thumbs up from him, one of the all-time superstars in this league. And this automobile will not be racing tonight, Steve, but it's going to be a set piece of this race. That is the last race car driven by Marty Robbins in competition in last season's Atlanta 500.
One of several race cars that Marty owned right up until last year. The field, Brock, I think, waiting a respectable amount of time for car number 22 to roll out in front of the fans here at the Marty Robbins 420.
Being driven tonight by Ronnie Robbins, his son, as the rest of the field moves out down the front straightaway. on the warm-up laps that precede all NASCAR Grand National races. Get a couple of laps behind the pace car to get the engines warmed up, the tires warmed up, the drivers a little bit comfortable in their seats.
And as Darrell Waltrip told you, Brock, and Neil Bonnet told me, Marty Robbins dearly loved to race, and most of all, right here on his home track in Nashville. Marty underwent open-heart surgery a few years ago, and that would stop just about any race car driver, but he came back and still pursued as active a racing career as his schedule would allow.
Yeah, and he had a wonderful sense of humor about it. You know, Marty had a few pretty stout crashes during the course of his NASCAR racing career, and he used to refer to himself as NASCAR's chief wall tester because of those bounces off some of the retaining walls. And here is Gary Baker, the president of the Nashville International Raceway, showing the drivers a little bit earlier a very special trophy, the driver's uniform that he wore in his last event at Atlanta, as well as a gold record that will go to the winner of this event. A special trophy, Steve.
And Brock, a lot of the drivers are thinking more about winning that special trophy than any of the money or NASCAR points that are up tonight. That's just not the sort of thing that would end up in anybody's attic gathering dust.
No, in fact, a lot of the drivers say they'll either donate it to the Country Music Hall of Fame here in Nashville or the Grand National Stock Car Hall of Fame located in Talladega, Alabama at the Talladega track. You can be sure, though, that that trophy will have a special significance for racing fans and country music fans for a long time to come.
We talked about the lineup through row number 6 with Bobby Allison, but some big names towards the back of the pack as well.
Well, Steve, this is one of the shorter tracks on the NASCAR Tour, just a little over half a mile, and just a click of the stopwatch during qualifying can put you back in the field. And there's that car 22, and you know that thousands and thousands of fans here tonight wish there was one man in that car in this field, a man named Marty Robbins.
Might even call me a 20th century drifter. 32 weekends I load up the car and I'm gone.
Now,
fans on their feet, Steve, as the race cars take the green, second gear down the front straightaway, upshift into third and up into fourth as Darrell Waltrip leads the way. Right behind him, Neil Bonnet out of the second starting spot as they head down into turn 3. Waltrip already got himself about a car length lead, Steve.
And Darrell Waltrip had an incredible start, Brock. He was on the accelerator hard a good half second before Neil Bonnet ever reacted to the green flag.
You know, I'll tell you, there must be a bunch of guys behind Waltrip saying, oh, no, not again. You know, he's won 4 races in a row in this place and has led, believe it or not, over 90% of the racing laps that have been unfolded here in the last 4 years. Just an unbelievable domination of a short track event like this, Steve.
Darrell Waltrip being followed not that closely by Neil Bonnet, the red car of Tim Richmond. And you know, Brock, these are kind of the tense early laps when anything can happen. The driver's doing a very good job of staying out of trouble on this short track in the early going.
Well, this starts out to be a one-groove racetrack. You notice most of the cars are running down low through the corners, but as the racetrack gets some rubber laid down on it, you're going to see the groove move, and really the cars will be able to operate in a higher groove. More cars will be able to pass. But in the early laps, as you say, it's tough. Everybody stays down low, and Waltrip just is handling like magic. Look at that. He's moved out to maybe a 10-car lead. They come down the front straightaway. He has the ability to set a car up. He and his crew chief, the legendary Junior Johnson, have the ability to set these cars up so they handle like magic on these short racetracks. That is, of course, a Chevrolet Monte Carlo, a car that Junior has set up for the season for Waltrip. It's a very good race car on the super speedways, but boy, it is so tough on these short tracks. It's almost unbelievable.
Well, Brock, in many cases, especially among the well-financed professional teams, they have a separate short track car.
Absolutely. They'll use, some of them even have a special road racing car that they use for running at Riverside, the only road race on the Grand National schedule. And then the short track cars, you say, a little bit different chassis configuration to permit better handling. This is a handling racetrack. It does not a lot of speed, as Tim Richmond, a young kid from Ohio, made his name at Indianapolis and then came down here racing with Harry Gant, also one of the fine short track specialists in NASCAR. Ran a long time on the short tracks before coming into the big time.
Now Gant, number 33, challenging Tim Richmond, number 27, for that third spot.
And they're like a lot of other guys. They're all hung up in the middle of the field fighting each other, while this man has broken clear into a long lead.
And he'd like to stretch it out as far as he can, because sooner than you might expect, he's going to be faced with traffic on this short track.
Yeah, you come up on the back markers pretty quickly on a half mile, or in this case, this is a little bit more than a half mile, as I said earlier. It's kind of an odd shape, as we see Ricky Rudd running in that fifth spot, and there is one tough customer, as they say, Dale Earnhardt, in that sixth place in that number 15 car. And there he goes. Now, you notice the groove is changing a little bit. They can get around on the outside. And then on a short track, generally speaking, Steve, the slower cars will dip down on the apron. They will let the faster cars by on the outside rather than on the inside.
And Tim Richmond at car number 33, Harry Gant still going at it. Now, the red car, number 27, is a new short track car for Richmond's team. His crew chief, Tim Brewer, was telling me they got lots of horsepower. They qualified number 3, but the car is not handling properly. And as we've heard said, you've got to have that balance of horsepower and handling on this kind of a racetrack.
It's particularly important on a racetrack like Nashville, Steve, because it's down in a bowl, and there's not much wind circulation in here. And some nights, this place has been just incredibly hot. It has caused enormous driver fatigue, and of course, if the car's not handling, it's even worse for the driver because he's working all the way around, sawing on that wheel and fighting the automobile. Fortunately, tonight, it's the other way around. It's a little on the cool side, and we've got some threatening weather off there in the west, and people are a little worried about showers.
Well, this man, Darrell Waltrip, right now, anyway, doesn't have very much to worry about at all, as he has a commanding lead in the early going of this Marty Robbins 420.
Not so with these guys. They're still fighting it out. And there's Bobby Allison, who's moved up from 11th starting spot into the 7th position. He's being challenged on the outside by Morgan Shepherd. Shepherd is a fine short track driver. That's his background in this business. Of course, we all know Bobby Allison can do the job on anything from a gravel road to a super speedway. He's just fantastic.
And it was Allison who last year challenged Darrell Waltrip right down to the final race of the season for the national title. Now here is Tim Richmond, number 27, and he is being sandwiched between Harry Gant, 33, and Dale Earnhardt, 15. Richmond is going to lose that third place.
Well, like I said earlier, the racetrack is starting to get some rubber on it, and people are starting to run high, 2 and 3 abreast through the corners. And look at Earnhardt way up high, down the back straightaway, and he's going to try to tuck in underneath Harry Gant into turn 3. He may get past him. Earnhardt's using the whole racetrack, and he won't hesitate. He muscles his way through a lot of traffic that way, but Harry holds him off as they run down toward turn 1.
Well, first he tried him on the inside. Now he's going to take him on the outside if he can. Number 15, the blue and yellow car, Dale Earnhardt, trying to take third place away from Harry Gant, 33. And so far this evening, the best racing is really in the middle of the pack, because this man, number 11, Darrell Waltrip, the yellow and white car, proves Brockway they might as well just give him the deed to the racetrack. He owns the points.
Well, he does right now, but I don't think anybody's prepared for him to take permanent possession, because one of the neat things about this kind of racing is its unpredictability. We could have a caution flag at any moment. You know, there are other guys that could spin out and slow everybody down. Also, we got pit stops coming up, and this racetrack is very, very hard on tires. So Darrell's going to have to stop for some fuel. He may maybe have some little mechanical problems, or somebody else may slow him down to a point where suddenly he's right back with the rest of the guys.
Well, and Darrell has led many races like this, Brock, and still not ended up in the winner's circle. So he is by no means driving right now with a total confidence factor. They are slowing the field down. The yellow flag is out, as that storm we mentioned earlier is apparently passing through right now. So these cars not equipped with rain tires, no windshield wipers. The yellow flag is out, and they're going to circle around the racetrack here to see how the weather develops. At this point, the yellow flag not a welcome sight for Darrell Waltrip, but it is for the rest of the field, because at least now Neil Bonnet, number 2, can pull right up on Waltrip's bumper.
Nashville is not one of the more famous racetracks on the NASCAR circuit, like Daytona, Talladega, or Charlotte for that matter, but it's an old fairgrounds track. In fact, the Tennessee State Fairgrounds are located right outside, and it's a fairly controversial and interesting racetrack nonetheless. And we talked earlier to some of the faster qualifiers about what they thought about this track.
Well, it's a tough track. All short track races are really a lot tougher than some of the super speedways. Here, you got a lot of cars in a small circle, and there's not enough room for everybody, and you're in a turn all the time here almost. You got very short straightaways, so you're constantly working the car through a turn, and with the traffic on the racetrack, it keeps you on your toes. You get very little time for rest, like you do on a super speedway where you have a long straightaway and maybe you can relax a minute and tighten up the belts and
do something like that. Here, you don't have time to do that.
You know, if you notice these corners here, you're down in a hole when you're in the middle of the corner. So it requires a good bit of horsepower to climb up out of that hole up on the straightaway on the banking. And what happens is once you get that thing jumped up on the straightaway, then you get the momentum up, and that's the reason we're seeing the big speeds at the end of the straightaway for this track. It's a combination of horsepower and handling, and it takes a total effort here to be able to win at this track.
Harry, it seems like a lot of drivers sort of carry on a love-hate relationship with Nashville. Some of them really like the racetrack, others really don't like it at all. How do you feel about it?
Well, I think it's as good as any racetrack we run on, a half-mile racetrack, and I like it pretty good. We've run a lot of races up here, and it's not any worse. It's a little bit better than most of the half miles we run on.
It's a short track, and you can't really relax physically, but mentally you can, I relax here pretty much, and you can plan a little more strategy here than you can on the super speedway.
The racing track itself, it might even be the best of all the short tracks, but the big drawback here is the pit road. Is really the worst pit road in all of NASCAR.
And when this light rain quits falling, that very pit road could be a very important factor in the outcome of the Marty Robbins 420.
To the town of Alfreel rode a stranger one fine day. Hardly spoke to folks around him, didn't have too much to say.
The year was 1959, and the car wasn't a stock car, but rather a micro midget, a small open-wheel race car that Marty raced in his early days, and it was called Big Iron. You'll remember that as one of Marty's hit songs from that period. As we continue at a slowed yellow flag pace at the Marty Robbins 420, Darrell Waltrip still in the lead. But while we're under caution and waiting for the rain to abate, let's go back up the road to that garage with Ed Bruce and talk a little bit more about Marty.
I'm standing with the man who remembers Marty Robbins from his early days of racing. He's the current race director at the Nashville International Raceway, Doyle Ford. Doyle, Marty wasn't your typical race driver, was he?
No, he was far from a typical race driver. Marty was a guy that was out to have fun and keep everything safe as possible. No, typical, never.
Well, I've heard a story about Marty's first win at the track. You were there. Could you tell us about it?
Yes. Marty had warned all of us previously that if he ever won a race, that he would take the checkered flag lap and would not bring the checkered flag back. We used to have a tradition that the winner of the race would take the checkered flag and hold it out his window and drive around the racetrack. He had told us if he ever won a race that we would never get the flag back. Our flagman at the time was very hesitant to give it to him, but the spectators demanded it more or less, and of course tradition demanded it also, so he reluctantly gave the flag to Marty, and Marty took off with it and never came back.
Just drove off the track.
Drove off, went down, locked the flag up in his truck or whatever, and...
of course, he could have been just running late for the opera and had to get to the show.
Well, he could have. I doubt that was the reason this time.
Sounds like he's quite a character on the track.
Absolutely. He was, you never knew what to expect out of the guy.
Out there not just to race, but to have fun, too.
Absolutely. He's the type of guy that could take a very tense situation and turn it into a lighthearted situation just with one crack.
Well, I'm sure they're probably having a lot of fun over the track right now.
Well, I'm sure that they are.
Why don't we go back and check it out?
That sounds good.
Ed, we're about to have lots of excitement as the rain has stopped, the track is dry, and the green flag is coming out. Darrell Waltrip, number 11, the yellow and white car leading the Marty Robbins 420. And again, it is Waltrip, Rocky, sprinting out away from the pack.
Well, boy, we talked earlier about how well Waltrip's car was handling, but boy, what a bunch of horsepower. He just drag raced away from everybody else when that green flag came out, Steve.
And the rest of the pack, their progress is being impeded by this car you just saw go by. That's number 70, J.D. McDuffie, and he's at least a lap down, but is holding everybody else up right now.
Well, no matter, even if he's 2 or 3 laps down, he's still trying as hard as everybody else, but courtesy will demand that he dip down and let the faster cars through on the outside, and there he goes. He will, but nonetheless, he did hold everybody up enough so that Darrell Waltrip got himself a nice big lead again.
Boy, he sure has, and as you mentioned earlier, Waltrip has, led 90% of all the laps he's run here in the last 4 years. And that seesaw battle for third spot continues. Tim Richmond, the number 27 car, the red Pontiac, currently has it being challenged, and challenged seriously, by Harry Gatton, car number 33, and Morgan Shepherd now moving into this fray.
These guys have been running under a blanket all night. They just keep on round and round and round. Richmond's holding off Gant pretty well, and that's a tough, tough chore because Gant is a very, very experienced short track race driver, and he's going to pick his way through here one way or the other. Now he's trying him on the inside.
All right, car number 33, Harry Gant, is going to get around Tim Richmond. Gant driving the Hal Needham Burt Reynolds owned machine.
And Tim now being challenged from behind by Morgan Shepherd in that blue and yellow machine. Morgan's going to try him on the outside, way up high through turns 1 and 2. Will Tim pinch him up against the wall or not? It's going to be close, but Morgan gets by just a nose down the back chute, Steve.
And Brock, I noticed that car number 3, Ricky Rudd, has kind of disappeared from the contenders and is back in the pack.
That's a little bit of a surprise because Ricky qualified third. Very strong runner, has qualified very well all season, but just can't seem to maintain the pace in some of the events because of one mechanical ailments of one kind or another.
Well, problems or not, Ricky had a hard time keeping up with these guys because here we see Neil Bonnet, the red and white car, and right on his bumper for third place is Harry Gant. Gant in third, Morgan Shepherd, the blue and yellow car, in fourth.
Super race. Boy, if that big lead of Darrell Waltrip's wasn't as significant as it was right now, it'd be just a stand-up race between these guys. As it turns out, though, Waltrip's way out of our frame around on the other side of the racetrack, but that can change almost instantaneously.
You bet it can. It's that old story about the $2 part breaking just when it looks like you've got... Dale Earnhardt is into the wall. Dale Earnhardt, car number 15, has made contact with the wall. He has spun it, and incredibly enough, no one hits Earnhardt, nor does he hit anyone else, and he's got it going under its own power. But I'll bet you anything it's headed for the pits, Brock.
Oh, no question. He was getting lined up. Everybody was tucking up against the outside wall to get lined up to go into turn 1. Dale was trying to get into line, got pinched in between a couple of cars, bounced it off the wall, and sure enough, with the caution out, you know that he's going to dive into the pits and make a tire change for sure. He's flat spotted all his tires with that spin, so he's trying to get in. And this is, as we heard earlier from Bobby Allison, is a trouble spot at Nashville. It's a very, very narrow pit lane, and there's a source of problem here because it gets to be a horrible traffic jam with people trying to change tires and refuel the cars. Now we're under caution now, so there isn't quite the urgency that we'd have under a green flag situation, but a lot of the leaders are coming in. There goes Dale out. He took on left side tires. He may very well circulate the track and come in again. That's a standard tactic in Grand National Stock Car Racing, Steve Evans.
And that yellow flag may be a welcome sight for Bonnet, Gant, and Allison, for that matter, as under NASCAR rules, it gives them a chance to bunch up as close as they can get to Darrell Waltrip.
And that's the second time tonight that Darrell has lost a big lead due to caution. And there's Earnhardt in for the right side rubber change, as we thought, and that is going to put him way back into 19th place. Here's another young man that is having some troubles. We said earlier Ricky Rudd was falling back. He's now back to 23rd, and the speculation is that it's handling problems. They don't have the hood up, so it's not the engine, so they must have some handling problems. They probably jacked the weight around or changed his tires. Maybe Ricky can run a little bit quicker with fresh rubber.
But the attitude of all of these drivers, even if they've had problems like Ricky and fallen from number 3 clear down to the 23rd spot, if you get out there and race, you just never give up.
And at last here I am on the hill overlooking El Paso. I can see Rosa's cantina below. Out in the West Texas town of El Paso.
And we don't have to tell you the title of that all-time Marty Robbins hit that was also carried on the side of one of his race cars, as we're back at the memorial race in his honor at the Nashville International Raceway, the Marty Robbins 420, as we remain under caution following Dale Earnhardt's brush with the wall down the front straightaway. Currently back in 10th place, the man who started in 4th in this race is Tim Richmond. And earlier, Steve Evans commandeered Tim's seat in his race car to give you a better idea of how one of these cars works.
To show you the inside of Tim Richmond's Pontiac Grand Prix, I had to climb through the window just like Tim does. Had a little more trouble than he does, though. First thing Tim will do when he gets in this car is put his helmet on for obvious reasons. Next thing he's going to do is hook up the helmet to the radio so that he can talk to his crew chief in the pit area. And anytime he wants to talk to him, he depresses a little button on the seat here. Next thing Tim's going to do is make sure the car is in neutral. The pedals in the car, like any standard transmission car, you've got a clutch, a brake, and a throttle. Then he's going to turn on the ignition switch, the toggle switch that's marked in red. Once that's accomplished, he'll hit the starter, this far left-hand switch, and get the engine running. The first gauge any driver is going to check is oil pressure, because without oil pressure, you're going to shut it off immediately. On the racetrack, the two gauges he's going to try to monitor as he has time is water temperature and oil pressure. The other gauges include the large tachometer in the center of the dash, the oil temperature, that's the engine oil temperature, and also the fuel pressure. Okay? Some of the other switches over here control things such as differential cooling, and there's an accessory switch for whatever they may need it for. As far as using gears are concerned, you only really shift the car going in and out of the pit area. Otherwise, it's left in high gear. The rear end differential has changed the gear ratio depending on the track you're running. Should he have an emergency situation as far as fire is concerned, he's going to take his right hand and he's going to pound this round knob about as hard as he can, which is going to activate the onboard fire extinguisher bottle, which is mounted behind the seat, but plumbed up here where there are nozzles here and over to his left as well to protect him. And that's really about it, except that if there were a serious situation where the emergency crews had to help him out of the car, it's made much easier with this quick-release steering wheel. Comes right off.
Sounds very simple, Steve. Then all he's got to do is keep the thing between the fences for 400 or 500 laps.
See, just sitting in it, you kind of get the fever. Pace car off the racetrack, and we're looking again for a restart of the Marty Robbins 420, and we have got one. But look at Bobby Allison, car number 22 on the inside. I don't know if he broke any rules there, Brock, but he sure bent him.
Well, he sure did. He just got a good start. He saw that green flag. He had that car ready to go, and he jumped past Harry Gant. And he's making, this is the closest race we've had so far tonight. It doesn't look as if Waltrip is leaping into that giant lead that he's enjoyed every time we've had a green flag earlier in the show.
Really the first time that Darrell Waltrip has felt any pressure. But speaking of pressure, feeling it right now is Neil Bonnet as Bobby Allison in the number 22 car comes up. Brock just gives him a little tap to let him know he's there.
Well, let's not forget that Bobby started in 11th place. So he is moving right in on Bonnet in second place. Bonnet's held that position for the whole evening, but boy, there goes Bobby, and on the outside, that's a hard way around, but it looks like he might pull it off into second place. Yes, he does.
Bobby Allison just outmuscles Neil Bonnet and moves in within striking distance, possibly, of Darrell Waltrip.
Well, he's sure going to have a shot at him, and a lot more than Neil apparently has been able to put up so far in this race. Neil's been apparently content to sit back there, but Bobby is making a charge at Waltrip. Waltrip, as you notice, has not jumped out into that big lead. He's out there in front. He's got a nice clear track in front of him, but Allison has very much got his sights on him.
And now it's Harry Gant taking a shot at Neil Bonnet, and even Morgan Shepherd is in this battle in the blue and yellow car number 2.
I don't know whether Neil's having a little bit of problem, whether his engine's just gone a little soft during that caution or whatever, but he sure isn't holding off the rest of the field like he was. There goes Harry Gant by him on the outside. Morgan Shepherd's going to have a shot at him on the outside, too. Look at Morgan way up high, trying to get around Neil down that front straightaway. Can Bonnet hold him off? Bonnet's a tough, tough kid.
Well, this race has taken on a whole new complexion here, Brock, with Gant now moving into the third slot, followed very closely by Shepherd, and Bonnet right at the quarter panel of Morgan Shepherd.
You got to wonder whether or not Neil is having some problems, because now Jeff Bodine is trying to get by him on the outside, and Joe Rudman is right on his rear bumper. So definitely Neil Bonnet has had some kind of handling problems. He is falling back radically. So it's not a question of everybody speeding up so much as it is Neil having some problems.
But so far, no one has led a lap of this race except this man, Darrell Waltrip, number 11, in his Chevrolet Monte Carlo.
And boy, they're still beating up on poor old Neil Bonnet. There goes Joe Rutman by in 98, and number 44, that's Terry Labonte, who's just starting to make a move past. He should get down inside Neil as they go into turn 1. So Neil Bonnet is falling back. He may be on his way to the pits. I don't know, Steve Evans.
Look at this race for 5th and 6th. But the favorite line on the inside is Joe Rutman in car number 98. On the outside is Jeff Bodine, car number 88, the green and white car. This is for 5th and 6th, and it is a battle.
Two very solid young drivers. A lot of future for both of them in this league. They're going to just go after it around here. They're fighting as if they were going for the lead, Steve.
Well, there may be 27 other cars out there, Brock, but right now it's mano a mano, man on man, between Joe Rutman on the inside, the orange and white car, and on the outside, Jeff Bodine in car number 88. Joe Rutman recently moved from his native California to the south and is enjoying his finest ever season in stock car racing, the younger brother of former Indy champion Troy Rutman.
And Jeff Bodine comes from a racing family as well. His father ran a racetrack in upstate New York, so he had plenty of time to practice, Steve.
perfect situation for a budding race car driver.
Well, he was an expert, a really almost unbeatable pro in the northeastern New England area, short track modified circuit before he came south to try his hand at Grand National Racing. Now has himself an excellent car. That was a car, that number 88 car was a car that Bobby Allison had last year, so it's a first-class machine, and Bodine is driving it very well. Although right now he's got Terry Labonte in that number 44 car right on his bumper. And look at this.
How about it? Bobby Allison is closer now to Darrell Waltrip than anybody has been all night. Bobby Allison in second and Harry Gant in third. We have got a car race on our hands now.
The question is, Steve Evans, is whether or not Waltrip has slowed down or whether Gant and Allison have speeded up. That's the big question. Speculation, according to our watches, is that Waltrip has fallen off the pace ever so slightly, giving the other two guys a chance to catch up. So we wonder, does Darrell Waltrip have himself some problems, or is he just slowing down at this stage of the race, knowing that he's got plenty of speed in hand when he has to have it, and he can just move out at will? That's a question we won't be able to tell for the time being, at least.
Well, one thing I can tell you, this is the kind of racing that some 23,000 people came here tonight to see in honor of Marty Robbins. Whoa, look at Waltrip, Allison, and Gant. 1, 2, 3.
And Mother Nature's just stepped into the picture, Steve. We've got some reports of rain on the racetrack. In fact, we can start to see it falling now. And look at this. If Allison is moving on the outside, he's going to try to take a crack at getting past, but no. The yellow is out. We've got a caution out. We have rain on the racetrack for the second time tonight. You can see it spattering down in front of the flagman. And there's just no way that they're going to continue to race in these conditions. But Steve Evans, the interesting thing is, this is an enormous break for Darrell Waltrip, because if in fact he was having problems, he will have a chance to get into the pits and correct whatever is going on. If it was not the case and he just had plenty of speed and he's slowing down, well, he's okay either way. But it's a lucky break for him.
Well, for a change, the weatherman was right too, Brock, because the forecast was for brief periods of kind of intermittent showers. But it's starting to be just a little bit more than showers now. It's raining pretty hard down in some sections of the racetrack.
Well, you notice the guys have really come almost to a standstill as the rain just tumbles out of the sky now, with Darrell Waltrip in the lead, but Bobby Allison and Harry Gant right on his tail as we go into the caution period. The pace car is out on the racetrack. You've got these guys really slowed down, because don't forget, these cars are running slick tires, asphalt slicks, and the racetrack is now covered with a coating of rubber, so whoa, boy.
That's what they call a frog strangler down here. A gully washer.
Well, it may not rain in Indianapolis in the summertime, but it sure does in Nashville as the red flag comes out and the race cars head for the parking lot temporarily as the Marty Robbins 420 comes to a halt.
Mary about us. I told her about a great sin. Mary cried and forgave me, and Mary took me back again.
By 1963, Marty Robbins had graduated from his micro midgets to this 34 Ford dirt track car, and keeping with his tradition, he named it after his latest hit, Devil Woman. We're back at Nashville Raceway, where the rains have subsided a little bit. Everybody having fun, keeping dry as best they can, and everybody hoping for a restart as soon as possible. Right now, let's rejoin Ed Bruce up in the garage with our special guest and hear some more Marty Robbins memories.
I'm back with Doyle Ford, and we're reminiscing about Marty's racing days. Doyle, I understand Marty liked to clown around a lot.
Well, he did for sure. He would keep you on your toes because you never knew what to expect out of the guy. He was always up to something different from what anybody else would do.
What's this about making faces at the flagmen?
Well, occasionally, during the practice times at the track, there's no one on the track but maybe one single driver. This happened at Talladega, and Marty happened to be the driver that was on the track by himself. So there wasn't a whole lot to watch as far as safety was concerned. And when he'd come under the flag stand, I would pick up my flags, and I would pretend I was picking the guitar and singing. And after the practice was over, he caught me down in the garage, and he said, I'm going to make a deal with you. He said, I promise never to take your job as flagman if you'll quit singing. And so, you know, he was always doing something like that to just make a lighthearted situation out of the tenseness around the racetrack.
Sounds like he was out there not just to race, but to have a good time, and if he could pull a joke on somebody that worked, that was fine, too.
Well, he did, and the thing about it, he never picked any one special guy out to clown around with. He clowned with everybody. He was everybody's friend, and everybody liked him, and he just made very lighthearted situations out of being there.
He was a character, wasn't he?
He absolutely was. He was a great guy to work with.
Doyle, we appreciate you sharing the stories with us. Now let's get back to the Marty Robbins 420.
And we have some good news here at the Speedway. Ed and Doyle, the rains have stopped. The track crews are out right now trying to dry the racing surface and get ready for a restart. Brock Yates is out and about in the pit area and is caught up with Darrell Waltrip.
Does the race leader have any kind of say with NASCAR as to whether the yellow is thrown or not? In other words, can you talk to Junior and in any way influence whether yellow goes or not?
You know, they have a real funny way of doing things like that. They ignore the leader and watch everybody else. At 55 or 6 laps in the race, or prior to that, I was pointing up that it was raining. I mean, I had a nice lead. It's early in the race. They should know that I wouldn't be hollering it was raining if it wasn't raining. But they usually go to second, third, fourth, fifth black in the field somewhere to get their opinions. So they feel like the leader will be he'd be anxious for a caution, or maybe it's the end of the race and they don't want to take a chance on him giving some bad information.
Well, I can't imagine why you'd want to caution the way the car was running.
No.
What about, did you back down off a little bit near just before the caution, or did Bobby just jump out of the pack and able to run a little bit faster because he was clear of the rest of the guys?
Well, we're having a little bit of a problem. We have a flat tire. So the caution came at a good time for us.
Okay, now what happens with that flat tire? When can you change?
Well, as soon as they crank the pace car up and when we come around, we'll come right into the pit and change all 4 tires.
Okay, thanks, Darrell.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Well, if it beat a pit stop right now, he might drown because there's an awful lot of water that still has to be broomed onto the other side of that wall.
There's a lot of waiting during the course of any kind of an automobile race, either be it during the practice sessions or in rain delays like this as the tow cars and other official vehicles go around trying to dry off the track. But earlier in the going, Steve Evans had a chance to catch up with one of the NASCAR stars who has a special way of relaxing. And the neat part about this guy is that he can carry his hobby right to the racetrack, right to the main straightaway of the Nashville Speedway.
If you'd have been here about 6 hours before the start of the Marty Robbins 420, you'd have found this man, Morgan Shepherd, NASCAR star, roller skating down the main straightaway. You look like you've been doing this all your life. You're good.
Well, I don't know where I'm that good or not, but actually I didn't take it up till I was about 33 years old.
And you do it just for recreation?
Well, you know, this is a way of getting a good form of exercise. You know, a lot of people go out and run. Of course, I do some running too, but the thing about roller skating, it gives you real good balance. You know, it keeps you on your feet good. So it does more for you than running does.
And with the Marty Robbins song on the PA, it's relaxing out here for you too, I would think.
Right, and I can do a little dancing to that kind of music too, you know.
It must be really spectacular on the high banks of a Daytona or a Talladega on those skates.
Well, I don't know about doing any dancing on the high banks, but you can sure come down them fast.
You ever done any competitive skating?
No, not really. Like I say, I just do it for recreation, and I've been doing it about 8 years now.
You had some other drivers say, "Hey, Morgan, teach me how to do that."
No, they mostly just say, "Look, that idiot."
Well, they'll give you a nickname before long if I know these guys.
Yeah, probably will.
All right. Well, the storm has passed at Nashville. We're going to have a restart, but let's not forget the leader, Darrell Waltrip, has a soft tire.
Darkness over me since my true love walked out the door. Tears I never had before. Ribbon of darkness over me.
As with anybody who races cars in the big leagues, it wasn't always fun and games for Marty Robbins.
Ribbon of darkness over me since my true love walked out the door. Tears I never had before. Ribbon of darkness over me.
Marty knew that an accident once in a while was just all part of racing. And speaking of racing, we're preparing to do just that as we have a dry half-mile track here at Nashville International Speedway. The pace car preparing to take the field out single file for a few pace laps to complete the drying process. And bumping along behind the pace car is our leader, Darrell Waltrip. Now, he told Brock Yates earlier he'll be making an immediate pit stop to replace what is now a completely flat tire.
Boy, you know that feeling, Steve. I'm sure we've all had one of those things along the edge of the freeway. But one difference, he's got a bunch of guys led by Junior Johnson back there in the pits that are going to change that thing faster than you and I could open the trunk.
And, you know, Junior's not going to tolerate any mistakes in this pit stop because the whole crew has known for a long time it was going to happen.
So they're ready. Of course, Darrell can't pass that pace car until he gets to the entrance of the pit lane that you can see off on the right-hand side of your screen. So there he comes down, lumping his way down in there. And Harry Gant's coming in as well behind him. So we're going to have two guys making a stop, but the important one, the big player right now, is Darrell Waltrip as he bounces into the Junior Johnson pit. There's the crew ready. In fact, Junior's going to handle the jack down there. Harry Gant's crew as well. He's sitting in third place. They're going to work to get his right side tires changed too.
And Brock Joe Ruttman also just came into the pit area. But here is the key guy, the hometown hero, Darrell Waltrip, the Junior Johnson crew putting fuel in the car as well, and he is off very quickly.
Well, he's back on the racetrack, but let's not forget one thing. He's got a heavier car right now, and he's got a fresh set of tires, so it's going to take him perhaps a couple of laps to get those fresh tires scrubbed in as we watch Harry Gant get underway, too. Both those cars are going to be maybe 100, 150 pounds heavier than everybody else because they've got that extra load of fuel on board.
Let's don't forget he no longer leads the Marty Robbins 420. He will pull up in line as the last of the cars that are still on the same lap. In fact, our new leader will be this man, Bobby Allison, number 22, the first driver to lead other than Darrell all evening long.
And Bobby is, of course, one of the all-time greats in this league. He will be trying very hard not only to stay ahead of Shepard and Ruttman and Bodine and Labonte. Parenthetically, those four guys are four of the young lions in this business. Not too many of the old vets in that top five other than Allison. But more importantly, Bobby Allison knows that he's got some cars between himself and Waltrip, who's now back in ninth place. And his job is to use that open track ahead of him when the green flag falls to get as much advantage, as much of a big lead over him before Darrell can work his way through traffic.
Now, Bodine is going to give up his place that we just saw because he is coming to the pits in the 88 car. He was fourth coming in here. He no longer will be. It's not a problem right now. But earlier we heard Bobby Allison tell us just how congested, and he feels even dangerous, this particular pit road at Nashville Speedway can be. Now, the NASCAR rules say that the reigning national champion, in this case it's Darrell Waltrip, have their choice, first choice of where they want to pit, followed by the leading qualifiers. Brock Yates had a chance earlier to talk to some of the competitors about pit road.
Well, we picked the first pit coming out at the end of the pit road so that there's nobody can block you in, and you got a straight shot out of the pit. So it gives you a little bit of advantage because you never are blocked in the pit.
And this can be a trouble here at Nashville, I understand. You can really get jammed in here.
That's true. They've had some pretty bad little bang-ups here on pit road, and because some of them gets blocked in, they try to come out in front of oncoming traffic. And pit road's so narrow, the tires are laying all out in the middle of the pit road, so it's an advantage to be as far down the pit road towards the front as you can be, so you can get back on the racetrack without being bothered by somebody blocking you in.
It gets to be a circus on pit road, but it's not that bad. We've got to put up with it about everywhere we go, and it's just one of those things you got to put up with.
Usually it works out pretty good. Usually the guys running the lead lap pit the first lap, and then the guys a lap down pit the next lap, so it works out pretty good.
How about pit lane? I understand that can get awful hairy during a caution.
It gets awful close. It's real dark in there. It's real narrow. It's about room for about 10 cars, and they try to put 30 in there. And it's really, really dangerous. You don't mind running on the racetrack, but you hate like a son gun to make a pit stop.
Always count on number 43 to tell you how it is. You can also always count on pit stops having a big impact on the standings. While we were away, a number of cars pitted, and you can see the changes here on our leaderboard. Bobby Allison still number one, followed by Morgan Shepard now, Brock.
And a familiar name in fourth place, a Petty. Not King Richard, but his son Kyle. As they come off the fourth turn, the green is out, we're racing again.
Well, one thing we know for sure, Brock, is all these drivers are fresh and ready to race. They've had a nice rest during the rains. Bobby Allison, car number 22, the first man other than Darrell Waltrip to lead the Marty Robbins 420, is enjoying it now. Morgan Shepard, the highest he has run all evening long in car number 2, followed by Bonnet, Petty, and Earnhardt.
The car down on the inside there is Ricky Rudd, so he's a lap car. He's going to dip to the inside and let the fast guys pass. You got to wonder whether Neil Bonnet, who's back there in third place in that red and white 75, was able to make any corrections during this yellow flag period. Remember, he was in second for a long time, then fell way back. Kyle Petty still in fourth, Earnhardt fifth. Now, strong runner Dale Earnhardt is, you know that. He doesn't like being back in fifth. He only knows one place where he's happy, and that's in the lead.
And Kyle Petty can feel Earnhardt's presence right now. And that's Darrell Waltrip right up behind Earnhardt.
Absolutely. Now, that's the question. Did they get the car back into shape during that pit stop? Remember, he was absolutely dominant in the early phases of this race. But now he's stuck in traffic. He's going to have to work his way back up through the traffic. And as I said earlier, he's got a set of fresh tires and a little heavier automobile. So it's not going to be as easy as it was earlier in the going.
How about our roller skating Morgan Shepherd here, Brock? He at one point pulled right up on Allison.
Yes, sir. Well, Morgan is a very good race driver. He skates well, drives well. But now, look at this. Down inside in that yellow and white car, that number 11, it's Darrell Waltrip trying to muscle his way down on the inside, past some of the slower cars. And he's right up on Kyle Petty's bumper. On the outside, he's got Dale Earnhardt, so that's a little three-way tug-of-war in there for 5th and 6th place.
Now, Waltrip, who has proven that he can outrun everybody on the racetrack, now has to be very conservative, wouldn't you think, Brock? And not make a mistake, not get tagged into the wall or get boxed in where maybe he spins that car.
Well, this is just one of the realities of short-track racing, and it's really the more normal thing to have happen to a driver like Waltrip than to be out in the open like he was earlier. He's used to running in heavy traffic. He just pushed his way past Petty. Now he's up on Earnhardt's bumper. He's going to have to try to get past Earnhardt, but I'll tell you one thing. Getting by Dale is not going to be as easy as it was with Kyle. Kyle's just going to be a fine driver, but he's still a little bit inexperienced. So when he's got a man like Waltrip on his bumper, he's probably going to give way easier than Earnhardt. But, of course, Earnhardt is, in turn, having to go at Neil Bonnet up there.
Whatever problems Neil Bonnet was having earlier have obviously been repaired because he is racing. And right now, his main opposition trying to get around him on the inside is Dale Earnhardt. Darrell Waltrip still trying to find enough room to get safely by into 3rd.
Well, one question that's being answered right now is whether or not Darrell Waltrip's early dominance of this race was horsepower or handling. It certainly has to be handling, because you'll notice that both Earnhardt and Bonnet pull him a little bit down the straights, but Darrell comes right inside him on the corner. So that number 11 car is definitely handling. But watch this. Notice that Earnhardt will pull maybe a half a car length on him down the straightaway. So Darrell uses the corners to gain an advantage. He tries to duck underneath him, and you can pretty well generalize, Steve, that a car that can run low on a racetrack like Nashville is a better handling automobile. If you can keep the car down low like Darrell is doing right now, it means that thing is really hooked up. But still, Earnhardt pulls him again down the back chute. But there goes Waltrip again underneath him, but he just quite can't get enough of a shot at him coming out that corner to pass.
Well, you scrub off a little bit of speed, too, Brock, when you get down that low.
Absolutely. But there goes Bonnet, there goes Earnhardt, and there goes Waltrip. He's going to pinch Earnhardt down. Yes, he's got him down the back straight. He does push through. He's going to pinch Dale into the corner and take a shot at Bonnet, and he's going to get underneath Bonnet as well. So he passes 2 cars in 2 corners and puts himself up in 3rd place.
Well, Darrell Waltrip certainly showing tonight why a man of Junior Johnson's credentials would hire him as his driver. Waltrip on the left-hand side of your screen, followed by Bonnet and Earnhardt. But still leading this race is Bobby Allison, followed by Morgan Shepherd, Brock.
So we've got the old pro Bobby Allison, our roller skating pal Morgan Shepherd, and back there coming at him like a freight train, the number 11 car of Darrell Waltrip.
Even at the racetrack, Marty was always surrounded by adoring fans, and just like at his concerts, he was never too busy to give them an autograph and a big smile. We're back to racing in the Marty Robbins 420 at Nashville International Raceway. Bobby Allison has the lead in car number 22, followed very closely by Morgan Shepherd.
And even more closely by the second, that number 11 car of Darrell Waltrip. He has made an enormous comeback. Remember, he started in 9th place after the caution flag, Steve, and now he's right on Morgan Shepherd's tail. He's running low, and that is very significant, as I said earlier. He can hold a lower line than all the other cars, and that means that, it's a shorter way around the racetrack, but more than that, just as he's doing with Morgan Shepherd, he's gotten underneath him, he's passed him, and now he's got his sights on Bobby Allison. So that is the example that we talked about earlier of a beautiful handling race car in the hands of Darrell Waltrip.
I get a feeling Bobby Allison right now looks in the rear view mirror a little disbelieving. How could he catch him this fast? It is Darrell Waltrip pulling alongside, or attempting to pull alongside, Bobby Allison to regain this lead. Down low, as you said, Brock, and he's got the horsepower to launch it out of that hole and back up on the straightaway.
Well, he's just got Bobby Allison in a leather. I know Bobby pretty well. Bobby's a terribly competitive man, and he has got to just be fuming in that race car that he's had to give up this lead so easily to Waltrip. It isn't that he wasn't trying as hard as he could. He isn't a manifestly skillful driver. It's just that Waltrip's car is working so well, he's just driving past him. And look at this. Now that he's got a clear racetrack, he's just going away. Bye-bye.
Also, he's moving up a little higher, getting out of that low line a little bit easier on the car. The handsome, articulate, and often outspoken Darrell Waltrip again leads the Marty Robbins 420.
Well, he now has the line that he wanted. He had to run a little bit lower than he wanted to because Allison and Shepard were holding a little bit of the line that he'd used before, but now he's in command. Marty Robbins would have been proud of Darrell Waltrip tonight. Ed?
Here's a man who really made his mark in racing. He's recently retired from 31 years of racing. Clifton Cuckoo Marlin. Cuckoo, you raced against Marty. How good was he?
Well, I felt like that Marty was just a good driver on the track here in Nashville that you would run up against. Of course, he had some good equipment. And he was running them big blocks, the big Henny, and I was using a 427, and he got where he's pretty tough to beat.
He was competitive then.
He was definitely competitive.
I know one year you only lost one race all season, and that race was to Marty, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I was hoping to make a complete season and not lose a race on what I finished. But back then, see, we started inverted. The faster cars had started back. And somehow or another, Marty had a car capable of mine, but he got the jump on me and got to the front before I could get there. So I guess Marty knew that I had a certain pattern I used on a racetrack, you know, where you, with the high bank, you run straight up and straight off. And, of course, Marty took my pattern I run on the racetrack. And every time I start off, he'd go off with me.
So
and I just couldn't get by.
He just wouldn't let you around, right?
I couldn't get around. I tried him on the outside, and, of course, he would shift a little bit, but I always felt like the man was in front. He could drive a track where he wanted.
Yeah.
But he took it in my groove.
I hear the two of you had a little run-in together one time.
Yes, we did. It's going on who got to the front first. And somehow I was on the outside passing cars, and he was on the inside passing. And we both reached the front about the same time going into number one down there. And the cars got together. Of course, I went into a spin. And Marty didn't lose his. He kept going. And, of course, caution come out, and they relined the cars up. Of course, I had to go tail in. I had to lift Marty up front. Well, as the race went on, I knew I had to drive hard to catch Marty, but he ended the race. And I kept driving harder and harder, and I couldn't get to him.
How many laps did you have to go at that time?
It was a 30-lap race, and, of course, this happened right off about the 5th lap. And getting on up about the 25th lap, I was about to lose the car in every corner. I was trying so hard. And the pit crew come out and give me a sign, slow it down. Well, when the race was over, I drove in, one of the crew ran over and asked me what was wrong with me. I said, I was driving crazy out there. And I said, well, I couldn't catch Marty. He said, well, Marty done quit and done gone to Grand Wafra.
So you wound up winning the race.
Right.
Cuckoo, appreciate you coming by and sharing a story about Marty.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
Let's go back and see how they're progressing in the Marty Robbins 420.
And another great racing friend of Marty Robbins, Darrell Waltrip, is leading here at Nashville.
Marty Robbins had hundreds of friends in the racing fraternity, including this man, Big Bill France, the gentleman who started Grand National Stock Car Racing, and this guy, Donnie Allison, one of the famed members of the Alabama gang. He and Marty raced together for a long, long time in the old days. This man was just coming up when Marty was in his prime. Darrell Waltrip, they did compete against each other here at the Nashville Raceway, but now Darrell Waltrip is in command, and I'm sure that Marty would have been cheering him on tonight.
Brock, while we were away, Bobby Allison had to relinquish second position to this driver. They call him the Bandit, driver of car number 33, Harry Gant. He's got second, but quite a ways behind Darrell Waltrip at the moment.
Well, Harry waited a long time to get his first Grand National victory. He finally accomplished that last year, and he's one of the very best young drivers in this business. But right now, he's got a big job to catch this guy, Waltrip, who you just can't say enough about the way that car is working for him here at Nashville.
Or the way he's driving it. The two-time NASCAR national champion, really putting on a show for the hometown fans who have turned out by the thousands to watch this. Harry Gant is apparently going to give up that second place himself as the number 33 car is in the pits.
Well, this is a very damaging stop for him because, of course, it's coming under the green, and with the guys lapping here in about 20 seconds, it means that he's going to probably lose at least a lap and perhaps more as the crew changes the outside rubber. He's going to get tires on the right side. They're going to add gasoline, and in the meantime, Darrell Waltrip's going to make perhaps one lap, maybe two. So that was a tough stop for Harry as he gets a little sideways there in the water as he gets onto the racetrack. But here comes Waltrip in as well, so maybe Gant's not as bad off as we thought.
Both of them pitting under the green, so there's no advantage there. Now, the Junior Johnson crew has got to get Darrell Waltrip out of the pit area before Harry Gant comes around, or Gant will have the lead. The car is down off the jack, smoke in the tires, and Darrell Waltrip retains the lead.
Textbook pit work for Junior Johnson and his guys. They just couldn't have done it any better, and it puts Waltrip back in command of this race. Everybody wishes they could have that kind of pit work in the pits and in the garage. Unfortunately, Jeff Bodine's crew is not having that kind of luck. They're changing a rear end. They're just thrashing down there, trying to get that car back into the race. No fun at all for them. No fun at all for another guy who's out of the race, and Steve Evans is with him in the pits.
Dale Earnhardt, one of the real fan favorites, is out of the race. Dale, what happened?
Well, it broke a valve spring, I think. It dropped the valve down. And you can't run it like that. It tear the motor on us, so we had to quit.
Well, this short track race is hard on equipment, isn't it?
Well, not really. You know, it should have stood it. We aren't turning that much. It's just something happened, I reckon.
How's the track holding up, especially after the rain?
Well, it's in pretty good shape. You know, it's wore out. The pavement's been wore out on the racetrack for several years, but, you know, it's pretty hard to get a hold of the pavement. Waltrip's got it all to himself.
Trouble in the corner. Mark Martin, a youngster just in this league, tangles with Kyle Petty, another one of the youngins in this league. Kyle backing up down the racetrack. He may be trying to make the pits in reverse. That light in the instrument panel is just a warning light. There's no problem there, but he's got the right front corner of the car torn off. Kyle's trying to back the car around and now to limp it into the pits, but he and Mark Martin did tangle to bring out the caution flag.
And as soon as Bobby Allison saw that caution flag, he stormed into the pits with car number 22. They have already put right side rubber on it. The jackman now comes around, slides it under the left side. The pneumatic air riches go to work on the lug nuts. Boy, don't you wish they could do this down at the local gas station? Incredible.
Couldn't be any quicker, could it? Wow, look at those nuts and bolts go on there. And look at that.
Gets a little slippery down there with all the fuel and water and oil.
Get an A for effort.
Hey, I'll tell you what, it is mayhem in the pit area now. Now, this is what Richard Petty and Bobby Allison were trying to explain to us earlier. It can get crazy here.
Looks like the 79 Iranian fuel crisis or something down there. Everybody's going crazy. Cars trying to scramble through the cars. As you can see, as Junior Johnson said, they have to angle into their pits. There's no room for them to parallel park. There goes Ricky Red out first, but just a jam up. And they have, believe it or not, Steve, this looks a little amusing, but they have hurt some guys in this thing in years past.
As I walked out in the streets of Louisville, as I walked out in Laredo one day, I rode some aeroplanes. I don't care how I travel, I'll get there just the same.
We're still under the yellow or caution flag here at Nashville Speedway following a minor little tangle between Mark Martin and Kyle Petty. Darrell Waltrip, car number 11, has a lap on second and third place. Bobby Allison and Harry Gant. Brock Yates running second and third. What a performance to put a lap on a field like this with Allison, Petty. We've got a green flag.
An astounding performance, and then you know it's got to confound a whole bunch of people back there behind Darrell Waltrip, especially Bobby Allison, who is just such a competitor and also is very, very strong on short tracks like this. So he knows that Darrell Waltrip is going to have to either break or have a tire go down on him or have something happen that's going to slow down that pace, because at this point, unless something happens, he just is unbeatable. There's no question about it.
Oh, yeah, and I totally agree with you. Darrell Waltrip from nearby Franklin, Tennessee, has just been totally dominant. There's no other way to describe it.
Yeah, but you know, Steve, the fact that we've got a whole bunch of other guys still out there racing is a credit to the way these cars are put together. You know, in the old days, you'd have a big, big retirement factor here. A lot of cars that break their engines and chassis and transmissions, as we see Allison and Gant still running nose to tail for second and third. But the point is that we've got cars now that are so reliable, they handle so well, that we're not getting the kind of crashes and spins that they used to have in Grand National Stock Car Racing, and even more so, not the engine breakage. You realize that these engines are being twisted to nearly 8,000 RPMs over these race distances, and that is really punishing on the drivetrains, the valve trains, the engines, and yet they stay together. We've only had just a few retirements.
Well, even though Darrell Waltrip apparently has a lock on first place, there's a lot of racing going on, especially between Bobby Allison and Harry Gant. But no matter where you are in the pack, the higher you finish, the more money you make, and the more Winston Cup points you earn.
Absolutely. This is a 31-race series. Notice the sparks that come off Bobby Allison's car. That's just bottoming on that banking. He's probably scraping an exhaust pipe or a suspension member. It's nothing too serious, but it is kind of spectacular here at night.
That's right. You'd never see that in the daytime. It happens then, too. It's just not visible. So Bobby Allison, the crafty old veteran who came right down to the wire last year for the national title, and Harry Gant, the bandit in car number 33. That's the best race on the track and the one the fans are glued to right now. And don't you know that Bobby Allison and or Harry Gant would love to hear right now from their crew chief via radio that Darrell Waltrip was in the pits, or that Darrell Waltrip was having trouble. Well, I don't think that's going to happen, because Waltrip is running clean and easy, performing perfectly. He's in tremendous physical condition. He can easily do 420 laps here. Brock Yates is down in the Darrell Waltrip pit area with famed crew chief Junior Johnson.
I noticed he's running a little lower through than everybody. Well, that's the fastest way around this racetrack if you're handling. If it's not, you kind of go upstairs and run up there, but right now our car's handling a lot better than anybody else is down low, so that's real good. Thanks, Junior.
Junior Johnson right now, he can just smell victory here as he watches the car that he and his crew have put together seemingly perfectly. As Darrell Waltrip has embarrassed this field somewhat. When guys like Petty and Allison and Gant, the best financed, best equipped teams in the world, can't even stay on the same lap with the man, it's got to be disheartening for them. Just incredible.
And a performance that Waltrip seems able to repeat on these short tracks with amazing ease. He has a baffling ability to make a car handle. He runs very easily in traffic. He stays out of trouble, and the man has piled up just hundreds and hundreds of points over the years on these short tracks, and has carried him to victory in the Winston Cup Championship, when in fact, you know, he hasn't ever been able to win in the Daytona 500, the one victory that he really covets.
That's right. He piles up so many points here, though, Brock, that, well, that's the point you're making. Their emphasis on the short track car pays off at the end of the season.
Well, there are a lot of short track races in the Winston Cup Series at places like Bristol and Martinsville and North Wilkesboro and Nashville, and if you can win there, you can make a lot of hay, both dollar-wise and point-wise in this series.
Well, we're in the closing laps of the Marty Robbins 420. Darrell Waltrip, the car behind him, is at least 2 laps down. There is nobody on the same lap, and we are in the final 4 turns of this race. Darrell Waltrip needs only complete one more circuit on the last lap. Darrell Waltrip right now, I would imagine, just holding his breath, as anybody would, looking to the flag stand for the checkered flag. And he's got it. Darrell Waltrip wins the Marty Robbins 420. They're slapping hands down at the Junior Johnson pits. And taking second place is Bobby Allison. But the night belongs to this man, Darrell Waltrip of Franklin, Tennessee, and of course to the memory of Marty Robbins.
Race car is my way of making a living. My way of putting the bread on a table at home.
There he is. That's the man, Darrell Waltrip, winner by a full lap over Bobby Allison and Harry Gant. Another lap behind, two behind Waltrip, Morgan Shepherd and Bill Elliott. And Steve Evans is with the winner in victory lane.
Well, a lot of traffic. You lapped everybody on the racetrack.
Well, it just seems like we can get around here pretty good, and that makes a difference.
And, you know, along with this win goes that beautiful Marty Robbins memorabilia, and I'm sure that's going to find a special place on the wall of the Waltrip home.
I thought about that trophy all night long, and I really wanted to win it real bad.
Congratulations to you and Stevie and Junior, the whole team.
Thank you very much.
The winner of the Marty Robbins 420, Darrell Waltrip. Mr. and Mrs. Waltrip celebrating a rather emotional victory here in their hometown on their home track. Brock Yates is with the second place finisher, Bobby Allison.
Number 11 just had too much handling, it looked like, tonight.
Well, he's got too much something, that's for sure.
Boy, he gave it everything he had. With the car, it looked like your car was running strong. It looked like you were running a nice slow groove, and the car seemed to be handling pretty well.
Yeah, we thought it was pretty good. Really, it was one of those things.
Never happy with second place, Bobby Allison. Darrell Waltrip being presented the very special trophy by Marty's son, Ronnie Robbins, the last driving suit that Marty wore, some of his gold records, a very special award. Brock Yates is now with the driver who finished third, Harry Gant, car number 33. Brock?
The car seemed to be running pretty strong, but that number 11 just seemed to be stronger in dirt tonight, huh?
Yeah, he's running just like he always runs up here, and he laps everybody. I don't know what they do, but they sure got it working.
Did you have any problems with the car?
Well, our car was awful loose all night, and of course it's better than about everybody else's, but it was real bad loose, and it just wouldn't turn in the corners like Darrell's car would go. We thought we'd be real close this time, but I believe we're about as far away as we ever was.
Well, he's magic. He we watched him during the pit stops. They didn't hardly make any chassis changes, and the tires looked good, and they just went around like he was on rails. Magic. Maybe he must have some secret in here.
He got some secret here. I've never seen a car run that good.
Well, it was miraculous. Well, good job anyway here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Harry Gant, like Bobby Allison, talking to himself a little bit about the performance of Darrell Waltrip. I'm sure there's a lot of victories in store for Darrell Waltrip in his future career, but this is certainly one he'll never forget. Ed?
Thanks, fellas. Racing meant a lot to Marty Robbins. It was his fishing pole, his golf clubs, his way to unwind from the pressures of a career as an entertainer. But even when he was racing, Marty was an entertainer. He touched our lives in many ways, and he still lives on in our memories. We hope you've enjoyed the Marty Robbins 420, a fitting tribute to a very special man. For Brock Yates and Steve Evans, I'm Ed Bruce. Have a good day.
The executive producer of American Sports Cavalcade is Harvey M. Palish. Produced and directed by John B. Mullen. Promotional consideration provided for and a fee paid by Kawasaki. The Kawasaki KLT 200 is the three-wheeler perfectly suited to both weekend fun and weekday work. It features a 4-stroke engine, electric starter, and a 5-speed transmission. The KLT 200 from Kawasaki keeps the good times rolling.
Your sweet memory, it's all over now. Don't worry about me. When one heart tells one heart goodbye, one heart is free, one heart will cry. Oh, sweet, sweet baby, sweet baby, sweet, it's all right.